Hey everybody, Lee Livesay here. We're talking Swim Jig 101. 6 Sense has everything you could imagine in the swim jig lineup. You know, you can't have just one swim jig because there's all kinds of variables, all kinds of cover, all kinds of structure, all kinds of water clarity, where swim jigs are really, really good to throw. And I'm just gonna kind of break down a few different swim jigs from 6 Sense, how to use them, when to use them, what line, what rod, all that. This came back from Lake Okeechobee in the St. Johns River, and I absolutely blasted them on a swim jig. I really did at Okeechobee. I caught all my fish on it the final day at St. John's, and I caught every single fish on it the second and third day at Lake Okeechobee. Had a lot of fun. But they're really thick cover, vegetation, reeds, grass, lily pads. Anytime you're around a lot of vegetation, really thick stuff, you're gonna wanna throw a really big hook in your swim jig. And that's where 6 Sense has this jig right here. It's a 6 Sense Divine braid swim jig. Braid, designed to throw on big braid. It's got this really big weed guard and a really big hook right there. Really stout hook, can't bend it out with braid. Really thick weed guard to pull it through the structure. So that jig right there is what I threw down there in Florida. You know, like I said, if you're fishing lily pads, grass, thick bushes, brush, stuff like that, where you're gonna throw big braided line. You know, I was throwing 60-pound braid. People will throw it all the way up to like 80 in some places. Anytime you're throwing that big braid and you want that really big hook, you're catching big fish, pulling them out of heavy cover, you want the 6 Sense Divine braid swim jig. I've got a stroker crawl on it, full-size stroker crawl on it right there. Sometimes I'll put a Divine swimmer on there. You know, the trailers are variable depending on if you're reeling it, popping it, fishing it shallow, all that. Rod, I love the 6 Sense ESP 7.7 heavy for that setup. I had 3 of these on the deck at Okeechobee, all rigged the exact same. 7.7 heavy, allows you that link to throw that bait, you know, pull those fish out of the structure, set the hook, and just winch them in. So that's my setup and kind of the style that you're gonna use that braid swim jig on. Next, we're gonna go just to the regular Divine swim jig from 6 Sense. You know, it looks almost the same right there. It's called just the straight 6 Sense Divine swim jig, not a braid. And it's the same profile, same parallel, everything, same schemes, but it's got a little bit lighter wire hook. Still a good big hook right there. I'm pulling on it pretty hard right there. Still got a good weed guard, a little bit thinner. But this Divine swim jig is really good to throw on straight fluorocarbon, but bigger fluorocarbon. You know, I like to throw it on 18 to 22-pound fluorocarbon line. I really love a Divine swimmer on it like that. It's really good in, you know, sparser cover, clear water, stuff like that, where you're maybe some deeper hydrilla, you know, where you're just reeling it over the top too. I'm gonna throw it on the same rod most of the time, that 6 Sense ESP 7.7 heavy. You know, you can bump down to a 7.4 medium heavy, 7.3 medium heavy, something like that. You still want a little bit of length to throw it, winch those fish in. It's still got a big hook. And you can throw it around cover too, but you don't want to throw that thing on a big, gigantic rod with braid, because you're going to bend that hook out a little bit. So that's a perfect setup right there with the Divine swim jig, just to throw in sparse cover, like I said, whether it's around bushes, isolated pads, or really deep hydrillas where I really love it. You know, sometimes this is just the perfect jig to put on 20-pound fluorocarbon and just go down the bank like you would throw a chatterbait or a spinnerbait, something like that. Maybe it's a little bit calmer, water's a little bit clear. It just looks really natural. You get a lot of bites on this just throwing it down the bank, no matter if you're skipping around docks or rocks or wood or grass, it doesn't matter. So that's a really good swim jig for straight fluorocarbon right there. It's the Divine swim jig. And these next 2 swim jigs are a little bit different. One is more of a Finesse. It's actually called the Conda Finesse swim jig. That's it right there. I'm gonna show you a profile difference in a minute. It's the Conda Finesse swim jig from 6 Sense. So the first thing you see is a lot smaller size. Let me show you the size difference right here while I got it. That's that Divine braid. And that's the Conda. Look how much smaller it is. Big profile difference, big hook difference. But the first thing you see is a really light weed guard. Real light weed guard, smaller size, Smaller hook, you know, you can put smaller baits on it and stuff like that, but it's still stout. Like you can still catch 10 pounders here at Rayburn on it. You know, I've got a full size stroker crawl on that one. I cut this one down about 1/4 inch just to match the jig size. So, you know, if you're throwing a Divine swimmer, you want to throw like a 3-3, cut it down a little bit, cut down your stroker crawl, bongo, whatever you're going to throw on the back of it. But this jig is just like it's called, it's Finesse swim jig. I really like this pressured areas. Say if I'm throwing that regular Divine swim jig down a stretch, I catch 3 or 4 and I want to go back down the same stretch and they're not biting that Divine, I can pick up this Conda and get an extra bite or two. It's a smaller profile, gets a lot of bites. It's a really good bait just to take to a pond and catch a lot of fish, but it's got a great big hook, like I said, really good hookup ratio with that light weed guard. But this is something you're going to want to throw on straight fluorocarbon or really light braid, a smaller rod. You're going to want to throw 7.2 to 7.4 medium heavy rod, depending if it's fluorocarbon or braid. Just a really great swim jig, just to reel around any structure and get a lot of bites. Actually throw it a lot, catch a lot of fish on that Conda. So now this last swim jig is a little bit of a niche. It's a little bit different, but it has a purpose and it gets bit really well. It's the Axle swinging swim jig right there. You see it doesn't have a weed guard. You're kind of wondering what's going on here. It's got a great big hook in it. So it's that same Axle design of jigs that we have at 6 cents. I'm going to take the trailer off so you can kind of see what's going on here. Behind that head, there's a screw lock right there. So this one I have on a bongo trailer. There's a screw lock right there it's on. And then you're going to see this big hook right here that comes out of the bottom of the head. Has that pivoting design. It pivots up just like that. That Axle hook is designed to pivot up. So when you get a bite, it pivots up just like a snell knot. You can rig this thing weedless like crazy is the purpose of this Axle design. So you take your trailer, put it on your screw lock, figure out where you want it, then you slide that hook into it just like you were a Texas rig worm. Stays completely weedless right there. You don't have a weed guard anymore. Now you can just straight reel this thing through anything. Laydowns, wood, grass, under docks, anything. It's the most weedless swim jig on the market. It's the Axle swinging swim jig. That hook goes back and forth. It allows just a lot of action with that hook design like that. Any trailer you like. I really like the bongo on it, throw the Divine swimmer on it a lot, but this swim jig is really weedless. I throw it in really thick pads, laydowns, anything like that. I love it on straight braid, 65-pound braid, the same rod, that ESP 7.7 heavy. This bait is designed to go through the thickest stuff and pull bass out. It's got a great hookup ratio. You know, when you set the hook, that hook goes through your plastic and pops up just like that with that pivoting Axle design. Great hookup ratio. And it's just a bait when you're in the thickest cover to pick up and throw and you're not gonna get all tangled up. So those are 4 different swim jigs. You got the Axle swinging swim jig, you got the Divine swim jig, you got the Conda Finesse, and we've got, you know, my favorite, the Divine braid swim jig right there. Mix and match your trailers, listen to the rod and line setups I said. They're great baits to throw. You know, a lot of people are scared of it because it says jig. It's, oh, I'm not confident in a jig. Just go throw them. I don't care if you're in a river, you're in a pond, you're in Canada, you're in Texas, just go throw them. They're super simple to throw. You can reel them high in the water column or down low. You can flip docks with them, everything in between. Check them out at 6centsfishing.com, the whole swim jig lineup.